Hey guys, welcome back. I've had a few requests for a video on the BJD Faceup materials that I use, so I'm going to go through what I use. You can use a whole lot of different things, but this is just what I use, so stay tuned. So first off, if the doll already has a face up, you want to remove that previous face up using a acetone-free nail polish remover, and you can find these in any chemist or any store, supermarket. It's available everywhere. I just use this one that I find in my local Priceline store or Chemist Warehouse store if you're in Australia, and this helps remove any of the face up that has been on there previously, and also gives it a thorough clean, and it doesn't eat away at the resin like an acetone nail polish remover would. Alright, so I primarily just use brushes to do all of my face up, and I have an array of different brushes. You don't need expensive ones. These are just cheap brushes that I get from my local art store, and they work perfectly fine. So I'd recommend just getting a handful of different side brushes to do different types of jobs like brushing and more fine lining stuff and paint work, and also some eyebrow stuff. So for really fine pieces, I have this really thin brush. It's lost a few bristles in its time, but it's perfect for little hair pieces. So for a primer, I tend to use this Liquitex matte medium, and it is a water-based matte medium. That means you can dilute it with 20% water, and I use this over Mr. Super Clear because it's a lot less toxic, and when you get it right, it leaves an excellent tooth for all of the paint and pastels to stick to. I've personally never had a problem with using this for my face-ups. I've never had any face-ups that have been flaking or have been affected with any humidity, so it's really great, and I find it works really well for me. The only thing is you need an airbrush to apply it, so if you don't have an airbrush, you need to go out and get one of those if you use this particular one. Otherwise you can use something that is in an aerosol can like Mr. Super Clear, and I think you can get some model primer for little model sculptures as well. So this is the airbrush that I use, and it's an Iwata airbrush. I have more details on this particular airbrush in a separate video, so if you want to know more about this airbrush and what compressor I use, you can check out in my Materials 101 playlist where I have all the details about this particular airbrush and where to get it and stuff like that. And this also isn't a cheap airbrush, so I really find that this one works well. So for the paints, I pretty much only use this Chroma Curl acrylic paint that I paint my art dolls with. It works really great, and I like the way, the consistency of it and how quickly it dries. It's also made in Australia, so if you're an Australian, then you support Australian stuff. So you can find these at your local craft store. They're pretty much available Australia-wide. I don't know about America, but you can find something similar in an acrylic paint in your area. So I primarily just use this for like eyeliner and any details or any eye masks or eye markings that I do. I use this brand of acrylic paint. I also heavily use this white Chroma Curl paint to do a lot of my dolls have like markings on their face and stuff like that, so this is what I use to do the markings. A lot of them have like little dots or little lines and stuff on their cheeks, so this is the one that I use for those details. You can also water it down and add it to the lips and stuff like that, just to give it a nice extra bit of detail. So I also have a video on the paints that I use for my art dolls, which include different types of paint from this brand. So they are also in my Materials 101 playlist, so you can check that out if you want a little bit more info. And I tend not to use a whole lot of acrylic paints. I find it a bit too heavy for what I'm doing on the face, so a really limited amount of paint, but again, you can use whatever you want. Face arts aren't limited to certain materials, so whatever your style is and whatever materials you like to use, go ahead and use them, just as long as they don't stain your dolls, so something to keep in mind. So for the pastels, I use this Art Spectrum soft pastels, and they come in a set of 30, but you can get larger sets as well. But I find this color range works perfectly well for anything that I'm using. I use a lot of blacks and I use a lot of these brown colors, and I use yellow as well for some shading. I use white and I use orange quite a lot, and then I use a whole range of pinks and reds for the lip area as well, and that's pretty much all I use for this. So usually you just shave off a tiny bit of your pastel with a Stanley knife or something metal and sharp, and then you can apply it with a brush, and you can achieve the effects that you want. It makes it a bit more softer, so it doesn't put in on a whole lot of colour, so layering is always key to getting a lot of colour. But I tend to use a lot of orange in all of my shading around the cheek area, around the eye area, and also around the chin and the nose area and the forehead. So I use a lot of orange on things. Now moving on to the pencils, and I use a water-soluble ink pencil from Derwent. It's a set of 72 Inktense pencils. I've always liked Derwent pencils, they've always been great, I've had them since I was a kid. So this is a new set that I got, and they're water-soluble, so they work kind of like a watercolor. So when you add water, they sort of melt away and become sort of an ink, if that makes sense. So I find this really great to use. I actually don't use the whole set, so I really only use the black and the white. I'd like to expand more on that, but I actually find using pencils a bit hard to use on face-ups. But I don't know why, I just have a difficult time. It ends up like scraping off the primer, and yeah, it just doesn't really work great for me. So you can mostly find these pencils in fine art supplies, so you can find them in your local area or even online. Moving on to some lashes, and I actually use lashes from Daiso, and if you don't know what Daiso is, it is a Japanese $2 shop or yen shop. It means the whole thing is pretty cheap, everything in store is cheap. So I tend to get a lot of lashes from there and just trim them up. They work great for like girl dolls or dolls that you want to have longer lashes, but if you want a more male masculine doll, you probably have to trim the end of these lashes off because they're a bit too long, but if that's what you're going for, then perfect. And I usually attach these lashes with some Mod Podge. It's pretty simple, you can find it from any craft store that is around you. And I also like to add some extra shimmer stuff, so I use Pearl-X pigments. They're really, really great for anything. They're also by the brand Jacquard, which is the same as my paints that I use on some of my dolls. They're really great, high pigmented quality brand, so I highly, highly recommend them. I'm very impressed with every product that they have. But just to note, it has avoid breathing on the label, so just something to note because it is a bit powdery and it floats around in the air. So just be mindful when you're applying this stuff not to get it everywhere, and even wear a mask if you can. So this is usually found in finer art supplies or even online again. Now for any glossy stuff, I tend to use this Liquitex Gloss Medium and Varnish. This is also a water-based varnish, but I use it straight out of the bottle and it creates a nice glossy texture to it. And I use it for mainly the lips and sometimes the eye area. Just depends what I'm going for, if I want that waterline to be glossy or not. But I use this on a lot of stuff. I use it on my art dolls as well. It's a really great product and I highly recommend it. Just remember to wash out your brushes properly when you use it, otherwise it will end up ruining them. And this can be found in many local finer art supplies, but if you're in Australia, I think Officeworks stock them, so Officeworks is everywhere, so it's really easy to get. And again, you can even find it online if you can't find it in store. Right, so that is all the materials that I use for my face-up supplies, so I hope that helped. It's not limited to these products, so definitely try some other things out. And that is it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any video requests, you can leave them in the comments down below. You can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!